time to... I thought how small and unimportant all my troubles seem to be, and how lucky another day belongs to me. To die a little, that I might learn to live, to take from life, that I might learn to give. Today is mine.
This type of real estate is one, if not the most intimidating sight to many bass fishers, for it nearly always signals deeper water, which in turn means harder to catch bass. This type of vertical structure is called a bluff, which is a broad-faced bank or cliff composed of rock, mud, or clay, and is found mostly on midland or highland-type lakes, and often results where a creek or river channel works or washes into the bank. Just because it's usually located next to deep water doesn't imply that the fish using it will be located deep also. Fish location here depends on many different things. For instance, shade, forage, current, pH, water clarity, type of cover, substructure, and irregular features. These are major guidelines to go by when trying to establish a depth pattern, and they'll also indicate why some bluffs are better than others. Here we go. Come on in here, Junior. In that clear water, they'll sound right off down deep in that bottom of that channel. Where are you going? Oh, you go. Lord. Come on back. You're working me to death on this rock bluff fish. Come on. Got it right in the top part of your face. Oh, bluff bass. Bluffed you, didn't it? A little pulling thing. You know, there's no single method for fishing bluffs on a consistent basis, and this is why your approach must be varied, simply because our friend the bass is so unpredictable most times, and because of the constant changing elements and physical configurations of a bluff. Sure, there's certain times that certain depths and location patterns will be productive, say for long periods of time, but they're constantly, always changing. Say one morning you might find the bass, say suspended 5 feet deep, out here over 60 feet of water, 15 to 20 feet out from the bank. And that afternoon, they'll move to one end of the bluff or the other, where the channel turns in or turns out, and settle there on a ledge or underwater bluff point, say 10 to 15 feet deep. Today, it would be virtually impossible for me to show and tell you everything there is to know about fishing a bluff, because first of all, I don't know all there is to know. And secondly, is because bluffs come in all shapes, types, and sizes. And they're located in so many different areas. You've got visible rock bluffs, like we have here. Some are high, some steep, some low, some short, and some real long. You've also got some that are laced with timber that are called timbered bluffs. You also have bluffs that are mud, clay, rock, or a combination of all three. What in the world? Water washing back up on that bank. Or you have combinations of all three. You also have submerged ones, those that are located out into the lake on the outside bends of the actual channel that meanders its way across the floor of the lake. Okay, as I stated a little bit earlier, there are many good places to fish along a bluff. And the type of bluff we'll be fishing today is basically a clean bluff that offers a series of short stair-step ledges with deep undercut sections between each ledge, which provide excellent cover and shade. Areas of this type will not only attract bass, but can offer them a permanent home year-round, provided there's ample forage, which normally there always is. The two most common forms of forage are shad, and the other would be crawfish. Crawfish have always been attracted to rock bluffs because of the broken chunk rock and crevices along the wall, which are super places for them to hide and coon around. And shad migrate up and down the bluffs, moving from one location to another. Also, wind currents drift and blow bait in close to the bank. Another tip about fishing areas of this type is clear water. Clear water is an important ingredient in how strong this pattern might be on a particular lake. In this type of environment, bass tend to move more vertically, more so than horizontally, which is another reason they seem to hold close to a bluff of this type. As conditions change, weather, feed, pH, light, or whatever, they can go either up or they can go down. Whereas on other types of structure, they may move horizontally, say 100 yards out that way or maybe 50 yards back the other way to find suitable conditions. Now let's get back to what we're doing now. We're fishing along this short channel bluff in a depth of about 5 to 10 feet where there's a series of submerged ledges that extend out, on out, and then break right off into the channel. And the particular lure we're using is the flipper crawl. It's a weighted tail crawl with bristle type weed guard and one hook. With this type of lure, we can work it real slow from ledge to ledge, just about like we'd be if we were fishing a plastic worm or say a jig and pork combination, just easing it right along and falling. You know, I mentioned to you that these crevices along these bluffs are ideal places for crawfish. And so bass, using these type areas, they'll knock a rock over to get a hold of a crawfish. So it's an ideal bait to fish in this type terrain. And again, the way we're doing it, we're paralleling it. I'm casting out a series of casts, maybe one cast 2 or 3 feet off of this ledge or off of this visible bluff bank, and the next cast 2 or 3 feet further out until I lose those ledges. Then I'll reel it in and I'll ease up. But I'm paralleling it and I can cover a lot more water fishing it that way. I can keep this lure in a productive strike zone 80 to 100% of the time. Now the depth that these fish are using, as I said, they're about 5 to 10 feet. Now as light changes, they could drop off a little bit deeper. But when they hit that thing, they'd soar right off into that deeper water. But up under these undercut ledges where the erosion has washed out, no dirt, just pure rock. Great hiding areas, and when they see that crawfish fall off one of those ledges, they just ease right out and try to take him back up under that ledge until I pop him, and then he'll turn and come right out and go off into that deeper water. But the way I'm fishing, I'm just letting it fall and hit a ledge there, hit the ledge. I'm easing it along just a little bit further, kind of working it with the rod, picking it up, setting it right back down. And what this crawfish will do with this weight toward the back, when it comes down, it'll just stand up on its tail in a defense posture. It looks so realistic. Now that bait probably hit in about 5 feet of water. But don't let me throw right out there because I'll be just straight down into about 60 feet, right into that actual channel. I can miss those ledges real easy if I go out too far. But as long as I can feel them, I'm going to continue that series of casting down to about 10 feet. Whoa, look at here. That's not a bad one. You sound off down there, you go. Ooh. Good fish. I'll never get him up. Get up. Back to the bottom. Oh, yeah. Come on. Come on. hit it too, didn't you? Not bad. Not bad at all, my boy. Some of the most productive bluffs are those that have ledges that extend out underwater, where we're fishing now. One good way to tell if a bluff offers this type of terrain is by reading the structure above the waterline. You'll see the effects of erosion above the waterline, and the strata of rocks should tell you that there will be ledges under the surface. It's been said many times that the longer you can keep your lure in front of a fish or in the strike zone, the better the odds of him hitting it. That's why it's important to parallel a bluff whenever possible, at least on the initial pass, using a series of fan casts. By doing this, you'll be able to fish it much more thoroughly and faster than by casting into it, and your lure will be in a productive zone at least 80 to 100% of the time.
All right, now fire. Ooh, there he goes, back up on the ledge. Whoa, big boy. Oh, get on back down there, you sassy self. Come on. Come on. Now, I'm going to show you something. You talk about eating that bait up. Look at that, none but line coming out of his mouth. That's a healthy little thing. Now get on back on, what is it? Get on back on your crevice. There's a lot of times that they'll hit that bait like that. I'd say 40% of the time when you catch them, you won't see anything but line coming out of their mouth, and that really tells me that they really want it. I mentioned the word substructure earlier. Let me explain what that is. Whenever you find structure within structure, you know it's going to be a preferred spot. This is particularly true when fishing a bluff. And you should look for cuts, pockets, slides, and points on a bluff or at each end. Naturally, the farther these areas are apart, the better your chances of finding fish on them. By reading the visible bluff structure, you'll have a fair picture. These forms of substructure features extend on below the surface. You're coming on like Mr. Big, aren't you? Well, there we go again. Come on back. Come on back. I'm going to wear you out. He's so strong. Bye. Thanks. A minute ago, I mentioned points at the end of a bluff. These features are prime locations, especially if it's a channel bluff. This is where the channel comes in against it, or just before the channel brushes the bank, and just after the channel starts to turn away. The upper end is called the turn in, and the lower portion is called the turn out. If a current is present, either natural or caused by water being pulled through a dam or a spillway, you'll nearly always find that the down current point will be the most productive. And I can't really tell you why, but I know it's true. Whoa, me. Look at this dog pool. Come on back up here. Where you going, huh? Go. Be so little, you're so strong. All right, easy. He won't open his mouth. Barely got him, though. Here we go. What in it? Let me tell you another reason that this area is so productive. Two other key features that really strengthen this pattern are the two major creek arms that flow into the right and to the left of the channel bluff we're fishing today. Anytime you can locate a channel bank that is basically isolated or that seemingly is there with no other channel banks close by is always great. Another good thing is that you have a migration of both bass and shad that migrate back and forth from the main lake to the creeks on either side of the bluff and vice versa. Naturally, the channel bluff between the two is a tremendous long-time holding area. Come on in here. Come on. Oh, cut out. Cut it out. Come on. Cut out. I told you something a little bit earlier, that the best way to fish a bluff is to parallel it. However, if the ledges extend way out into the lake, there are times when the only way you're going to catch fish on a bluff is to cast directly into it and work lures like a jig and pork combination, a plastic worm, a jig and spin, or a flipper crawl like we're fishing today. Walking a lure down the ledges takes a certain amount of practice, feel, and skill. If you lift your rod tip too much, the lure will probably move too far and could miss a ledge or two in between. The trick is to move the lure only a few inches and let it drop a foot or two to the next ledge. If you move it a couple of feet, it could fall 5 feet or more before striking a ledge, and you would pass up all the water between the two. This particular presentation is not the fastest fishing method ever devised, but it is an extremely effective one. Just like this big broad-faced mass of rocks that we call a bluff. It too can be extremely effective. So the next time you head out on a lake and see this type of structure, don't let it intimidate you. Give it a try. You know, I said something a little bit earlier at the beginning of the show that it would be virtually impossible for me to show and tell you all there is to know about fishing a bluff. Because, first of all, I don't know all there is to know. But maybe some of the things that I've learned and tried to share with you will encourage you to try bluffing a bass. It wasn't too many years ago that most bass fishermen would pull their boats out of the water, winterize their motors, and hang up their tackle for another season just about the time the weather was getting chilly. In fact, there's still some northern states with bass seasons that legally end in the fall of the year and don't open again until late spring or early summer. But in other northern waters, bass are taken through the ice during the middle of winter, and anglers across the nation are beginning to recognize the potential of winter bass fishing. Latitude plays an important part in winter fishing, and for purposes of our discussion, we'll eliminate those waters that lie far south. So instead, our thoughts will center around those areas where water temperatures might drop into the low 50s and low 40s. A number of bass fishermen that bass disappear during winter months, but obviously this is not true. Since all fish are cold-blooded creatures, they are directly affected by surrounding water temperatures, and nature has tailored their metabolism rate to colder temperatures. Body functions are at a norm when bass reside within their comfort zone, but as water temperatures fall, the fish becomes sluggish and slows down. Significantly, bass will not chase a lure very far in cold water, and sometimes they're more prone to feed on smaller tidbits than to attempt to gorge themselves on larger prey. Now, a fisherman's understanding of this is the key to winter fishing in many areas. When you're fishing cold water, well, you got to think slow, real slow. The idea is to fish a lure as slow as you possibly can, and even then, you're probably fishing it too fast. Old Mr. Big isn't about to do the 100-yard dash or work very hard for food. A bass that is ravenous in the summer can probably get by on about 1/10 of the food intake in 45-degree water. To be successful when water temperatures are low, you must drop a falling lure right in front of a bass, or either inch a lure along the bottom so that it passes directly in front of his face. But if you insist on burning a crankbait or burning say a spinnerbait or buzzing a buzz bait in cold water, well, your chances of success are virtually nil. During the winter months, bass usually school in most lakes, and they can really bunch up tightly with a lot of fish taking up very little room in the water. Depth is also a problem in the winter. Fish can be anywhere from 2 feet to 60 feet or deeper. It all depends on the weather and the specific lake. Normally, however, bass will be much deeper in the winter in highland lakes like Greer's Ferry, Center Hill, Dale Hollow, Norfolk, or Bull Shoals than they will be in midland lowland lakes like Eufaula, Toledo Bend, Ross Barnett, or Kentucky Lake. It's important to remember, the clearer the water, the deeper you're going to find them. Now, in muddy or off-colored water, they'll usually be much shallower, say 1 to 10 feet. Now, in a clear water environment, it's a completely different story. Bass go deep. They go very deep during the winter to seek warmer layers of water, and only a few degrees can make all the difference. The deeper they go, the more difficult they're going to be to locate. But once you locate them, they're much more dependable than shallow fish. Shallow bass are much more affected with barometric pressure and weather changes than, say, deeper fish. However, on a shallow or lowland lake, when the pressure's steady or close to normal, and the area has experienced several warm days like we're experiencing here, it's not unusual for bass to move up from deeper depths and suspend in and around cover, such as treetops, boat docks with cover planted around them, even up under floating cover, such as a log, or whatever cover is close by, even around a deadhead. Oh, what? A deadhead. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, what's a deadhead? Well, a deadhead, also called a deadfall, is a fallen tree that has floated for some time. At some point, one end of the tree became waterlogged, heavier at one end than the other, and either sunk to the bottom or hung up along a ledge or in other submerged cover, exposing only the trunk portion of the deadhead. This is an excellent isolated form of cover that can really produce a bass or two, or even a limit,
if it's located close to some other key irregular feature. Today I'd like for you to join me as we try to pursue the deadhead bass. This area is really a prime location. It not only has a few exposed deadheads isolated here and there, there are several more submerged just below the surface, and most of them are close to the ledge that meanders its way through this location. The lure we've selected to use today is ideal for this type fishing. It's a weedless drop bait, a spinner bait in a 1/4 ounce size. With this weight, we can work the cover very slowly, and by adding the frog chunk, we'll be able to create a much slower fall because of the buoyancy the pork provides. Now let me show you how we're going to be fishing it. First of all, we need to position our boat, which we've already done, in order to fish the deadhead properly. We want to cast, and we want to parallel the cover, working the lure in the direction of the limb growth. Now, what are you're asking yourself? Well, what is limb growth? In other words, if you take a tree and you cut it off at the bottom, and it falls forward like this, all right, from the top of the tree being the front of my hand, the limb growth grows in that direction. The limb growth grows kind of up and out. So, if we've got the deadhead positioned right here in front of us, what we're doing, we're actually casting to the trunk of the deadhead, working the lure down into the limb growth, working the lure with the flow of the limbs, or the growth of the limbs. Therefore, it's much more difficult to hang up that way, and when you catch a fish in that type of cover, you can bring the fish through the limbs much better. Now, if we went to the opposite end and cast, trying to work the lure between the forks and the cracks of the limbs, and we hung a fish, the chances of catching the fish would be virtually nil. So, how we're going to fish the bait, we're going to cast the bait out. It's usually the best way to catch a fish. But cast the bait out, and we're going to let that bait fall, just slow fall. And as it falls, you'll feel it hit those limbs, or I'll feel it hit the limbs. And as it hits the limbs, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to let it fall back. But as it starts to fall back slow, I'm going to drop my rod to about the 10 o'clock position and feel limbs right there. I'll bring it back up to about 12, climb up over a limb right there, and let it fall right back down again. Just falling right through those tops. And it's falling extremely slow. By that pork rind on the back, that's going to add the buoyancy, as I said. And as it falls back, it's falling down where the heaviest amount of cover is, and that's down at the top end of the tree. With more weight, with more limbs, it created the waterlog effect. So the more weight went down first. Naturally, the trunk of the tree kind of floated up. But the key to fishing it is concentration. We're trying to parallel it, going right down it, and we're going to let it fall. It's coming off of a ledge. That thing is wedged right against the ledge there. And this, as I mentioned earlier, there's a ledge from this old channel that meanders its way up through here. And there's several tops just below it and further on up along this ledge. Some of them are submerged, some of them are not, just like this one here. It's a heavy fish coming right at me. Ooh, don't get under there. You didn't like that old bait, did you, boy? Easy. Easy. There we go. Look how dark this fish is. Nice wintertime bass. I'll let you go back to your top now. This form of covered deadheads can be located in many different areas of a lake, such as, well, out in a flat, in a mass of timber, along a ledge like we're fishing today. But the best producer of fish will be the deadheads that are isolated from other cover, close to deeper water. It's important to recognize that wind and current will often shift this type cover around, or it'll sink in time from becoming too waterlogged. Consequently, they may not always be in the same place you found them a few months ago, or even a few weeks ago. Naturally, those that are wedged will remain in one location for a much longer period of time.
fish. Oh, what is that? Where are you going, my boy? You're going way off to the right of the boat. Come on to it. That's a pretty fish there. Look at that. Oh, look here. Come on. Oh, calm down. I know you're cold. My hand's cold. Come here. That water is probably about 45 degrees. And his body temperature is the same as that water. He's a cold-blooded creature. So they're not going to be that active in that real cold water. That fish right there is full of eggs. She is definitely full of eggs. And cold too. Pregnant and cold. I'll turn this one loose. Be easy with you now. Okay. Here we go. You ready to go back to your deadhead? I saw you see you nod at me. Go. As we know, almost all game fish are cover-oriented, a fact that can present problems for some anglers. If, for example, you're faced with several acres of cover, such as bushes, standing timber, even a quarter-mile stretch of aquatic growth, lily pads, hydrilla, eelgrass, or whatever, where do you begin? Well, any key irregular spot within the mass cover will be the highest spot. But so often, those irregular features, well, they're just not there. When you're faced with this, your catch per hour can be increased by concentrating on the isolated cover. Isolated cover could be a brush pile, a boat dock, a lonely snag, a stump, a little bitty small weed bed, a pile of rocks, or it could be a deadhead, like we're fishing today. As long as this cover is located in the proper depth of water that the fish are using and located along an otherwise barren stretch of shoreline or lake bottom, close to a deeper depth change. Regardless, if the bass are shallow or deep, they're nearly always going to select areas close to deeper water. They may be using an area only 5 feet deep or even 2 feet deep, but you can bet that deeper water is close by. Sometimes a change of only 3 feet can make all the difference. And bass using a much deeper depth will also select a location close to an even deeper depth change. Over the years, I caught bass as deep as 52 feet. And the best area, I'll never forget it, was on Lake Ouachita. I was catching them 52 feet deep, and the best area along this 52-foot depth was a ledge dropping from 52 feet into 120 feet. And I feel the reason for this is that deeper water close by, well, it gives a bass a sense of security, an escape off into deeper water. They'll select areas close to deeper water, but we'll sacrifice that at times when they move shallow to spawn. But you can bet there's a creek channel or deeper water fairly close to the spawning grounds on most lowland, midland, and highland type lakes. That one's got me in a tree right there. There he comes out. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in just a minute, talking about a fish that bushy. Oh. Did all that spunking in there for nothing, didn't he? Boy, I thought you was a whale when you hit that thing. You through? Good thing about that guard, that little drop bait. Oftentimes, if the hook's loose, that weed guard kind of locks it in right there. The old fish has got wind in her. Okay, it's time to say goodbye. As we stated earlier, a deadhead is a fallen tree that's become waterlogged and sunk, leaving only a portion of the tree exposed. A deadhead is an excellent place to locate bass, but a deadhead that's wedged along a drop is always better and should never be passed up. Single bass will hang around the exposed end of the surface, and concentrations of fish will hold up in the thick cover below. This illustration is typical of what we're fishing today. Now, sometimes the deadhead will flip-flop and position itself in the opposite direction. Here, you'll usually find fish suspended higher in the heavier cover and located closer to the surface, especially when the water begins to warm after several warm nights and warmer days. Naturally, the surface water is warmer than the water below it, and the submerged limbs serve as a great ambush point where bass can attack bait fish as they swim by. Now, I mentioned a minute ago about a fish hanging you up. Well, that fish got around one of those limbs right there for a minute. Now, the mistake that so many people make when a fish bushes you, I don't care if it's in a deadhead, if it's around a pier post, a bush, or whatever, they continue to just put pressure on that fish and just winch him up. Just keep on winching until they can't winch him anymore, and they pull him up so tight on the limb to where he can't swim. They've got his mouth wedged right against the cover. The key to freeing a fish that bushes you is to apply the same amount of pressure to him that he applies to you. If he pulls 2 feet, you pull 2 feet. Now, I didn't say reel 2 feet, I said pull 2 feet. If he pulls 3 feet, you pull back 3 feet. If he pulls a foot, you pull a foot. And most times, if you do that, you'll free 80% of the bass that bush you. But you don't want to just keep pressure and winching him, because all you're going to do is just winch him up there to where he can't swim, and then he's going to wear your line or break off or tear the hook out because he's got so much leverage at that point. In here, he's mad too, isn't he? Well, get tough. What are you gonna do with it? Can you throw it? No, I think you can't. Easy, easy, easy. I love to catch these things. Bud, you had it hooked too, didn't you? I'm gonna hurt you. So pretty. All right, go back home. There you have it. Some tips and techniques on catching deadhead bass. So while other anglers have quit until spring, bundle up and give the cold months a try. You can capitalize on some mighty good wintertime basses. You know, one of the greatest aspects of bass fishing is the variety of ways and styles it offers the fishing fraternity. Anglers can spend a pretty day with a cane pole and a cork, or a spin cast outfit, fishing from the shoreline or from an old John boat, or they can speed across the surface in a fancy bass boat, trying to tease or tempt bass into striking sophisticated lures and using the latest in high-tech rods and reels. During most of the fishing season, let's say from
late spring to mid-fall, there are a variety of techniques at work because bass are most active during these times, and most anglers who stick with a technique long enough are eventually going to score. However, in the late fall and the winter, the underwater pace of life slows down. Bass, like most fish, are cold-blooded creatures, and their body temperature is the same as surrounding water. Naturally, the colder the water, the slower a fish's metabolism. It turns at a much slower rate, it feeds less, and it moves around less frequently. Many summer anglers like to cover a lot of ground when fishing a big lake. They'll fly in, hit one spot, make several casts with a variety of lures and different presentations, and after working the area quickly, well, they're off again to another point, a ledge, a flat, a tree line, or whatever, giving it a try, and then zipping on to another location. In a half a day fishing, a big lake runner may cover 10, 20, 30, or even 40 miles more of water, an equal number of spots. But when the water temperatures turn cold or turn toward the chilly side, fishermen need to take a hint from Mother Nature and slow their pace accordingly. When water temperatures are in the 40s to mid-50s, a fisherman might spend the entire day slowly and methodically working only a small area of timber, for instance. Naturally, where there's some type of key feature close by. It might be a ledge, a channel, or a change in the bottom composition or whatever. And if he's living a good life, maybe he'll be lucky enough to locate one nice school of bass, or maybe even an area of bass. Speaking of living right, we must have the past couple of days because we did locate an area of timber that is holding some really nice fish. Look at here. Get up here, you big. Come on, come on. Ooh, big old cold nature. Come on. Mm-hmm. Easy. Come on, come on. Come on. A big old gut on that fish. Bad. Ooh, I don't know who or who else. Let me tell you a little bit about this area. It's real unique. It has a creek channel that meanders its way right through this timber. Now, this particular tree sits right on the edge of the channel in about 12, 13 feet of water. Most of the fish in this area are on the creek channel bank itself. And it looks a little bit like this. From this illustration, you can see most of the fish are on the ledge. Anywhere there's timber, where it breaks off. All through this area, the water will vary anywhere from 12 to 15 on the bank, dropping from 20 to 25 into the bed of the creek. So it's an excellent tight place. It has adequate cover, and the fish seem to be using this area right now. One of the main reasons is the fact that there's quite a bit of feed moving in and out of this area. Now, when it comes to the bait that we're using, well, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's called a jig and spin. It's combining a spinner blade with a weedless jig, more flash where bass really haven't seen it. It's tremendously versatile. You can chunk it just about anywhere at any time. You can flip it if you like to flip, or you can jig it in thick cover one moment and fire it 40 feet and through and over submerged cover. And it can be fished in many places you can't fish a spinnerbait. Now really the only drawback with a spinnerbait is in brush it turns on its side while falling through the cover, and the safety pin posture makes it larger, which limits its ability to penetrate, say, extremely thick cover. Now the blade adds a tremendous amount of flash and vibration. The jig, which has very little vibration in the water by itself, just taking a jig and fishing a jig by itself,
primarily an eye contact bait, and you need to fish it more in clear water. But with a spinner on it, what it does, it adds a little bit of vibration to it. Now, the cable the blade is attached to is very flexible, as you can see here. So the lure will squeeze through thick cover in tight places and not interfere with the hook setting capability. Now, the main purpose of the cable is to support the blade, which in turn gives the jig a whole new dimension of action and, like I said, vibration. It comes with a spin-easy ball bearing swivel and a big bite hook for better penetration. And we've attached a frog chunk to the back to create a little bit larger image, and which will also help slow the fall of the bait as it falls. Vertical fishing is perhaps one of the most effective methods of catching fish in timber. First of all, it's very difficult to cast and work deeper depths. The vertical approach is much more productive. And secondly, the bass are not normally very active in cold water, and you must tease them into biting by keeping your lure in front of them for long periods of time. And fish tend to congregate tight in schools or in small areas and can be missed by random casting in timbered areas. Right. Whoa, look at here. Good night. That's another heavy fish right there. Come on up out of there. I didn't want to come up. He got the whole thing. Easy. Come on. Look at that. Had that big bite hook way back in there. Oh, there we go. There you go. Good on him. Good on him. It's eggs. I'm easing out of that channel. I'm up on the back side of it. With that big stump right back out here. See, there's a lot of stuff under the water. There's a big snag right here. Another snag right here. You know, depth is perhaps, establishing a depth is the key for bass, without question. And another important thing in establishing a depth level is temperature. Now, all game fish have a preferred temperature zone, and will usually select the warmest water available. And most fishermen seem to relate water temperature just to surface. But during the winter, this can be very misleading when it comes to finding and catching largemouth bass. In a clear water environment, you'll usually find that the thinner layers of water are often located maybe 20, 30, 40, or even deeper. And one thing you can do by trying to establish those, or find those warmer zones, is to take a temperature meter. This is a combo selector. Of course, it's got pH, color, but it also has temperature, and it has a probe. You can drop that. By dropping the temperature probe, you'll discover some excellent fish holding areas of warmer water in small pockets or areas. However, in a murky environment, you'll find fish much shallower. Now, when I refer to thinner layers of water, I'm referring to warmer water. And when I say thick water, we're talking about colder water, like we have here. This water is thick. You'll also find that clear water takes much longer to warm up than murky water. There you go. Come on back here. You gotta kind of horse them, because that stuff is so much cover down under there. Get their head up, they'll sure get in it. Come on back up here. fish is blind in one eye. Okay. Damn. That's a typical look midwinter fish. Oh, goody. That's a good eye. Got a bad eye. Yeah, enough to see that bait though. Good night. There he goes around that. Come on back here. Thought you supposed to be cold. Whoa, what's that good one? Man. That is a big, fat baby. Gotta roll on that. She is full. I'm gonna let you have them babies. I'm not gonna hurt you. I had my fun out of you. Goodness. Put you right back now. Bye. How'd you like that? You know, we've got water temperature of about 45 degrees. We've got air temperature of 43 degrees. In fact, water's warm in the areas. But my point is, these fish are cold. They're cold-blooded creatures, and they're not going to react real fast, and they're not going to fight like they would in 68 to 70 degree water. But the key is to put something in front of them and entice them to hit it. You want to feather that thing down and keep moving it up and down in front of them. Sometimes they'll grab it and just hold it. I've had a couple of fish do that, and you just feel something that doesn't feel natural, go ahead and set the hook. Other times they'll thump it, just a small tick. But you want to feather it down. You know, when we talk about dropping the lure, what you want to do is keep the rod tip low and feather the lure to the bottom. Now, a big mistake that a lot of beginning anglers make is to jig the lure up and then drop the rod tip quickly as the lure falls. They pull it up, and then they drop the rod real quick. In doing this, they lose touch with the bait, and they often miss that telltale thump or the light strike of a bass. Since most of the strikes always occur as the lure is falling or dropping back, the best approach is to jig the bait up and feather it down with the rod tip, trying to remain just about an inch or two behind the lure as you lower the rod. And if by chance, and it'd be a good chance, if the lure fails to fall, well, boom, you better set the hook. Goes another. Got me hung up. There he comes. There he is. Come up here, you hard pulled one. You are something. You're supposed to have that much energy in that tote. Oh, let me know. There it goes again. Come on. Stay off. Man. That big old bite hook has got, there's more room for contact and less margin for error with a little hook. See it good on that? She's about ready too. That water gets a little bit warmer. Here's something to remember. Many times I've jigged one side of a tree with no results and then moved to the other side and caught several bass on consecutive drops. If the activity stops, be patient.
Take a break, but don't move. After giving the spot a brief rest, go at it again. Very often, you'll catch several more. If not, well, move on slowly, but make plans to fish that same spot again, say a little bit later in the day. Now, under stable conditions, cold weather bass will usually not move very far from day to day, but when they do, it's more of a vertical movement. One day, one morning, the fish may be on the bottom in 20 feet of water, and the next day, or that afternoon, they may only be 15 feet deep, suspended 5 feet up off the bottom. If you should go back into the area where you caught them earlier, on the bottom, and not get a strike, well, try working your lure 3 feet off of the bottom, then raising it up a couple of more feet or so on. By fishing on the bottom, like you caught fish earlier, you could be fishing under them and not even get a strike.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You're going around that. Come on up here. Get on up here. Come on. Going on back around it again. Here you go. Here you go. Where did I get you? In the bottom of the lip. Sure did. Here we go. We've been catching our bass today on Strike King's jig and spin. But here's several other great lures for this type of fishing. The grub, the jig and eel, a jig and spoon, and, if the terrain will permit, a sonar. And when the water temperature warms up, let's say into the 60s, or even higher into the summer months, well, the old plastic worm is hard to beat. Well, there you have it. A day in the trees with Bill Dan. In the past little while, we've tried to share with you some excitement and, most of all, some helpful techniques about jigging bass in the timber. I sure hope you realize that we only covered a small section about this method of fishing, but maybe we covered enough to give you an idea of how it's done and a thought to give it a try. Because fishing the timber, well, it is different. It can be very productive, and last but not least, it's a whole bunch of fun.